This is TWiT.
There's been some news this week, and I think maybe even last week a little bit, about App Store changes. Apple and Google, in many cases, is involved in these changes, first in the Netherlands and then also in South Korea, where rulings there have resulted in Apple needing to make changes to the App Store. Joining us today to talk about these changes and kind of dig in a little bit and pull this stuff apart is youtube.com/Rene Ritchie's Rene Ritchie. Hello, Rene.
Hi, Mikah. It's always so good to talk to you.
Yes, good to chat with you too. So let's dig into this. The first thing we want to talk about is the Netherlands. It's a very interesting ruling because it's specific to dating apps. And basically it says that dating apps have to be allowed to use third-party payment systems if they want to. Now, what I understand is that Apple will still take a cut, which is kind of the big thing about why people would want to use a third-party payment service, is so that the cut is reduced, 15% for small developers, 30% for larger developers. Do we know how much this cut is going to be that Apple's going to take?
I don't think we have any absolute numbers now. I mean, we could model it based on what Google's doing, and that is 15% if you use their system. And I think it's 11%. It's 4% less if you decide to roll your own. But I think the bigger picture here, just for a second, is that in the beginning, everything is such a big gold rush, and the App Store and the Google Play Store start, and you have all these like gold rush mentalities, and people are making money hand over fist because there's very little competition yet. There's still scarcity, and there are these big success stories. And then like Apple's only taking 30%. Traditional publisher relationship, they take 55%. This is amazing. But then as time goes on and platforms mature and things become hyper competitive, and now apps are basically commoditized. They're pop. They're like what happened to internet news and internet music, and with Napster, like just the value of each individual piece has been taken away. So they're only really valuable in aggregate. And then you see people starting to stop growing the pie and fighting over the size of their slice of pie. And a lot of these lawsuits are fighting over that slice of the pie.
Gotcha. So yes, this is sort of the modern way of the web trying to sort of get, as you say, your piece of the pie in this. Now, similar things have happened in South Korea. There aren't as many details there. In fact, Apple hasn't has given its suggestions or what have you to the South Korean board that's in charge of this, but we don't really know kind of the details there. Do you think that this is going to be similar to what we see in the Netherlands, where it will be this third-party payment system allowed, but it will require that Apple will still kind of take some sort of cut from that? Is it going to be similar in your opinion to what's already there?
Yeah, I think what Apple needs to do, because one of the problems that we're facing right now is that a lot of these systems, whether it's Google or Apple or anyone, Amazon, were built up during a time when the internet was largely unregulated. And that meant that they could move at international scale. There's basically one set of rules for the App Store, for the Google Play Store, like for all of these things. But now they're starting to fall under the jurisdiction of very different small regions of the world, like, small quote small, like the US is regulating, the EU is regulating, Korea, Japan are regulating. And it would be very, very hard for them and for developers who want to sell internationally to try to figure out rules for every different place. It would make it almost unworkable. So I think what Apple is doing is setting up a series of APIs that are going to expand what the App Store can do. So rather than just transact to the App Store, there are going to be APIs that Apple uses if you want to use a third-party payer. You've got to ask for one of two different entitlements. You've got to tell them which payer you're using. And I can't imagine those won't just be rolled out internationally eventually, because it will be absolutely unworkable if they aren't.
Yeah, can we actually, I was hoping you could explain for someone who, comes across this story and they see the words, that they see the phrase, create a separate app binary. Those are kind of weird words for the average person. What does it mean for a developer to need to create a separate app binary? And why do you think Apple is at least saying that they are doing it this way?
Yeah, I can't speak to why Apple would be doing it this way. I think it does make the lives of users much more complicated. Apple seems to not care about the complication when it comes to like forcing us to buy Comixology or Audible books outside of the App Store anyway. And maybe that's just for pure platform management reasons. But you would have to basically make a second version of the app. So you could have Dutch dating app, the regular version, and then Dutch dating app PayPal edition, that if you use that one, you can choose PayPal, for example, as your provider and not have to go through the App Store transactions. And these are always win and lose for customers, because there are a lot of benefits of going through the App Store in terms of like it's one single transaction. You have a set payment system. You can go in and dispute the transaction if you want to. If it's a subscription, they're forced to notify you in advance if they want to renew it, which is not the norm by any means for subscription services. And also for developers, because understanding tax laws in every single country that the App Store runs in is difficult. Like, how do you know what taxes you're supposed to pay in Japan? So I think there's a little bit of grass is greener there, but they will save on some transaction fees. And I think Apple and Google are being very careful to reduce the amount of commission by a very small amount, because they want you to think that the value of the App Store, of the Google Play Store, really is far beyond just transaction processing. Like everything that they provide for you, that's the 8% or the 9% or the 11% of the fees. And it's really like 3 or 4% that's the cost of doing the transaction.
Now, you talk to, and I imagine know, quite a few developers who make apps for the App Store, you and I both. And I'm curious about if you've sort of done the litmus test, if you've stuck the dipped the toe into the pool and checked the heat. I'm curious, kind of, do you think that developers are going to make use of this option? And if so, what kind of developer will be more likely to make use of this option? Is this kind of just a big company thing, or are there cases where smaller developers who only have a 15% commission rate would maybe be encouraged to use a different type of payment system on the App Store?
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I think, developers aren't a unimind. They're not a monoculture. And a lot of times people say developers are upset about this, and some very vocally on Twitter, but others just as vocally not. For example, some people really want side loading so they can get their Epic Game Store onto the iPhone. Others are terrified of it because they believe their $10 calculator app is going to just be ripped off through piracy immediately. And the same thing with this. Some of the larger companies who handle large bulk transactions all on their own are very excited because they think that they'll save a little bit of money on those fees. But other developers are like, we're just going to be frauded out of existence. Like, how are we going to be able to track any of these transactions? It's going to be much more difficult. And of course, they don't have to offer any of these things, but it's that classic argument of, when it's impossible, nobody even thinks about it. When it's possible, suddenly you have a bunch of people who insist on it. Like, you're going to have to allow this, otherwise we're not going to download your app anymore. So it does open up a whole realm of complexity that I think will benefit the larger companies, and smaller developers are going to just have to learn to live with it.
So the next question I'm going to ask has a very easy answer. If I ask, could Apple do more? The answer, of course, is yes, they could do more. But more, I'm curious, sort of in the folks who are sort of coming out against this or saying that it should be more. What does more look like? What is an app store that has different payment platforms that works in a way that people would actually want? Do we know what that looks like? Because I guess what I'm saying is there are complaints about the way that Apple is doing this process with the separate app binary. Is the perfect world one where it's one app binary and there's, the different payment options available there? Do we really know kind of what people want, or is it just that there's an overwhelming amount of complaints about whatever comes out in this?
Yeah, I think, if I could be, Phil Schiller God mode for the day, and I got to be in charge of the App Store and just do what I wanted, spend all of Tim Cook's money. I think that this is going to be a level of complexity and regulation that Apple shouldn't want any part of. They might think that the DOJ is too disorganized, or the EU is too ridiculous for any of this stuff to pass. But we've seen with everything from browser ballots to cookie disclosures to GDPR, that a lot of real, or just like the legislation that's being tabled right now in the US, there is ridiculous laws that are ultimately bad for everybody that get passed all the time. And really getting out ahead of this would behoove everybody. And my gut feeling is that Apple shouldn't be doing this at all. They shouldn't be creating these different versions of the apps or the APIs. They should just concede the digital goods market. And I know, it's easy for me to say, I'm not responsible for shareholders, but just let developers link out through the web, like not in the app. If you're in the app, you use Apple Payments or Google Payments, but link out to the web, and from the web you can use whatever transaction system you want, PayPal or Stripe or whatever suits you. So if you are Amazon, you press a one button within Comixology or within Audible, and you're out and you're buying your stuff, and then you're back in the app. That would eliminate any complaints, any monopoly abuse charges, any of these other. It would just render it all moot. And I don't think it would hurt Apple that much. I don't think they make that much off of standard digital good transactions. The one sticky point, the one thing that Apple and Google have been more protective of than anything, is their Smurfberry bucks, their Vcoins and their Pokecoin, all that stuff, because they're all basically just funded by these free-to-play addictive casino games. And that's the one that even Google wouldn't let you link out to before. That is a whole other ball of wax, because I think that they would substantially reduce their revenue. But I dare say I think it would be worth it, because it is none of their primary businesses. Neither Apple nor Google depend on that revenue. It's extra billions. And it's easy for me to say you don't need those extra billions, but why risk all this legal problems, this legal pain and hurt over something that isn't your primary business?
Yes. Rene, that was an excellent answer. Of course, always a joy to have you on the show. Folks can head to youtube.com/Rene Ritchie if they want to check you out. Where else should they go to check you out online?
On MacBreak Weekly, here every Tuesday, where Leo and Andy and Alex and I get to have just so much fun all the time with you in our ear, which is amazing.
Awesome, Rene. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mikah.